our ultimate 2025 Springbok team, every Sunday with André Pretorius.
Welcome back to the Lekker Rugby Pod. André Pretorius and I are on a quest to go through each position of the potential Springbok field. It's a difficult one because, injuries intervene. Style and shape of the Springbok play in 2026, 2027 is unknown, but we're doing the best we can with what we have. And it's been a hell of a ride, actually. A lot of you guys have reached out and had your own debates, your own discussion. We welcome that. We are not in any way impervious, infallible, whatever. Andre, how do you feel about talking about the big guys, the ultimates, the props of the team this week?
Hi, Harry. Yeah, it's been quite a ride, like you said, and I'm actually looking forward to this one because when I was playing, these were the guys that I got very close with. I needed them. And, the more I watch the clips and the more I look at the work these fellas do, it's just, I get so much more respect for what they actually do. Getting up from a scrum, trying to determine which side is left and which side is right. You've just had no oxygen for a couple of seconds. And then you have to still remember the detail of the defense system or the attack system for that matter. So now I've always said it. I've got the utmost respect for these boys, and if I get a second chance to play again, I definitely won't come back as a prop.
So we are doing a familiar pattern, Andre. We are taking each position, and to the best of our ability, we are identifying the incumbent Springbok, the one who's got the jersey. Then we're talking about the guys who are chasing it. When we talk about props, this is kind of different because most props don't go 80 anymore. A lot of them come off at a predetermined almost 45 minutes. So you're looking at a group of props. And also, obviously, tighthead props and loosehead props often get misnamed. Even the Super Rugby Pacific Team of the Year this year and Super Rugby actually got them the wrong way around. Alan Alatoa and Angus Bell were switched. Eddie Jones, in his autobiographies, famously called Frans Malherbe loosehead. Looseheads and tightheads, obviously on a club level, if you went to False Bay Rugby Club, you could switch. Swing props like Tank Tatoy still exist. Trevor Nyakani could do it. But in fact, it's been specialized. What we've done is we've broken down each position into the most important criteria, not the only criteria, but the ones that sort of get you picked or not picked, the ones that get you 50 caps versus 75 versus 10 caps. 4 categories, and then we assign percentages for those. They're weighted. So there's the most important, then the second, the third, the fourth. We look at the challengers, and then we try to come up with a dark horse. And then actually in the series so far, a lot of those dark horses have been picked in the Springbok squad. Admittedly, Rassi's picked about 100 people, but still. So Andre, a lot of this comes down to your clips. Give us a little taste on what you're doing to gather these amazing clips and how long this has taken you. And I apologize again for putting you into the harder work part of the pod.
No, not at all. It's been a lot of fun, and I've been able to learn so much about these players. And obviously, from a coaching point of view, looking at certain fundamentals that these guys get right more often than not. So for every player, it's probably about 5 games minimum where you try and get their clips. Now, the nice thing with the forwards is that a lot of them only play a certain amount starting and then come off the bench. So the clips are cut in half pretty much for some positions. So, and then you'll take, depending on what your categories are, you'll put them into a category and then you'll put them into a playlist where you can go and view it like we do on the pod here. So no, it hasn't been a problem at all. It's been quite fun, actually.
I'm doing a graphic novel on each position, which is hopefully going to come out in the next year. And the props are one of my favorite word pictures of designing who these guys really are. In the loosehead, I've likened to a monk. A lot of them are very quiet guys. And I just imagine a monk running along a rocky cliff, with scars on his back, and he gets to a practice field and it's a bunch of other monks that are playing rugby. Or an English mastiff is the tighthead, slobbering, a little bit of a snorer, not the one you want to be paired up with on the tour, but, difficult to deal with. And in both cases, they might have a lot of Neanderthal blood in them, because there's about 2% left in Northern European bloodlines. And what I find is these props are often incredibly smart. And often they build on the team sheet as, the dumb guys, the beef, but actually they tend to be great businessmen, end up being chairmen of boards. They're overrepresented in the administration of rugby. Really smart guys. And I think, Andre, it's because the scrum is a very technical place. And even the things that don't do in the scrum, whether it's lifting or the maul or their ability to leverage their body, it's a thinking man's game. It's you don't just put a big beefy guy in there and hope he survives. There's plenty of props who are huge that get monstered by the smaller guy who has better angles. The scrum is a lonely place. It's one of those places in rugby where for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds, there's no respite, there's no escape. You are going to be examined. Yes, there's people behind you that influence you. Yes, the bind with your hooker is important. Yes, we get into all that, collarbones and shear and breakfoots, but you're kind of lonely as well if you're a tight head. You've got two men coming for you, trying to separate you, trying to make you squeal. And the kilojoules that are used up in a scrum that goes on for a while, where you're trying to milk a penalty, is insane. So what we know is that the number of scrums have gone down precipitously over the last 20, 35 years, as lineouts, but scrums particularly. But in a weird way, they matter even more because they're pinged more often as a percentage. So now if you get scrummed, you're going to be facing a penalty. You might even be facing a card. And that all leads me to this one thing, which is even if you only have 5 scrums, 6 scrums, 7 scrums in a game, you cannot afford to put someone on the field at the prop position who will lose you scrums, who has a scrum frailty. So you might be the best carrier in the world, you might be an amazing guy in the tackle zone, but you have to nail your core duties at the scrum, as well as the lift and the line out and the maul. A clothing thought about props is we all start out in different positions. If you trace the history of our lives and just kind of put, the list, I start out 15, 10, 13, 12, 7, 8. I find that if you play rugby a very long time into your 40s and you're at a club, we all end up as props. We all end up shaped as props. It's unavoidable. So these are the great guys in the team. So Andre, we're going to dive right in because we've got a lot of guys to cover. Just a little bit of a sneak peek of the categories we have is scrum, we have tackle, the contact zone, because teams try to isolate props and use them as weaknesses in the defensive line. Then if you can be a prop and not be a weakness in the defensive line, you've actually given your team a really big boost, because most backs are trying to find the prop in the defensive line because they can step them. The next category, so it's 40%, 30%, 20%, 10. 40% scrum, 30% the tackle contact zone, defensive line, 20% mauling, maul killing, maul pushing, and the lifting in the line out, as well as the restart sometimes. And then the final category, which is a bonus, 10% on the carry, because we don't expect props to carry 15 times. But if they carry 5 times, we want them to get over the gain line. So to shoot off, I think we're going to start at number 3. Talk to me about tight head props and what you're looking for about these guys, and then we'll kind of go down the list and go through the clips.
Harry, as like you just said, with the scrums, sometimes you don't even have a lot of scrums, but those scrums are so important, and you concede 1 or 2 penalties, you're defending mauls. And it's unfair to expect these guys to be able to be very effective in their maul stopping when they're scrumming to defend those areas. So it's such a compound effect. So within that, you want your prop to be really anchoring and sometimes not just dominating. And I think that's where South Africa's gone to the next level. We expect our scrum to dominate, not just to survive or not just to not concede penalties. I think we're in a situation where we can expect penalties when we do get scrums on both teams' balls. So that's the one thing. It's understanding your role and knowing where you fit in with that. I also think that, you say that they don't carry, and that is true, but you need that prop to also have the skills when he does get into that position. Some of the props are very, very agile, very mobile, move well, but you do get sometimes when the ground skill lacks sometimes, because they're not that. used to carrying, when they do get then they can close that up and they can go low and they can get down. But once they get onto the ground, it kind of feels like it's like a baby giraffe running for the first time. What I do with this, do I put it out or do I, So there is that where it's only 10% of our weighting, but I think with the way that South Africa play, the props do tend to get into position to carry quite a lot. And like guys like Ox and Steenekamp and those boys, they put themselves into position. They look to go and get the ball. So that's the role again within the South African side. The role of those positions the horizons have been broadened by the way that we play, and also by what Russie and them expect of those guys.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of these props, when they do carry, they get the settler carry. So you're in phase 3 or 4, things have not really gone right in phase 2 or 3, maybe. And you need someone to just be a bulwark. That's why I use the English Mastiff as an example. Just a big dog who can go in there and say, I might not get 2 or 3 meters on this carry, but I'm also not going to get -2. And we're going to be able to settle down and then give our decision makers time to decide, are we kicking, are we boxing, are we going again? So we're going to start out with Tightheads, and of course we're going to begin with the Buffalo from Badaasdorp, the man who builds dams in the Karoo with his bare hands, and who always is holding something. I always joke about Frans Malherbe. He's always holding something. Look at his Instagram. He's holding a baby, a beer, a rifle, a gun, the steering wheel. He's impossible not to bind. And when you talk to Frans, what he'll talk to you about the most is the bind. That he has a superior bind, which is why he's plus 36 or 37 on scrum penalties in his entire career as a Springbok. All the penalties against the Tighthead, all the penalties for the Tighthead over whatever it is, a decade. This is something, it's a cornerstone. It's a foundation. It's a foundation because when you pick the team, you go, okay, we got this sorted out. So take us through some of the clips of the work of the giant, the gentle giant, Frans Malherbe.
Right, Harry, before we go, just because we've got a couple of guys to go through tonight, I've kind of limited to 5 clips per player. We're trying to get, some good clips in there, show the technical abilities. I think Ox is the only one with more, but he had a couple of catch and pass skill events that I'd like to show. Right, so we'll start with France in the defense line. Now, there's one thing that I've seen with France's tackling is that he tends to get down on this knee. And when you get down onto the knee a bit late, like in this position, you can see that he gets caught with the ball on top of him and he gives away yards. Now, we know France isn't a guy to back down, and we know France isn't a guy that shies away from physicality. But on the next one, you can see when he gets it right, it's nice and early, leans forward, and the stop is made just there. So that's a feature of Frans Malherbe's tackling, is he wants to get low, forces himself to get onto that knee. He's just got to be careful of not dipping too late, because then he gets caught right on top of his knee and he gets pushed backwards. On the rucking, obviously France, very effective cleaning past the ball. Now, the reason I want to show this is the fact that you get a lot of guys, especially in this area of the field, that they go and they stop on top of the ball. But what France does is he blasts away. Bongi does a great job of going to seal that ball afterwards. It is in the 22. But France is an aggressive rucker, and he does move people off the ball, which gives you that nice clean ball to play with. And this is what I spoke about with the carries, Harry. You can close that up easily and you can get your ball back. But I think when you look at the technique, the amount of weight that you're working with, I mean, that's 130 kgs plus. I'd love to see him just try and stay up. You'll see a clip later of some of the other props where they use the tackler to keep them upright and then work himself onto the side. Now, this is running into a double head, so it's a bit different, but he's going down directly from there, but he's done enough, get him behind, probably didn't even need ruckers there, and he kept the ball. And then France has also got a lot of other talents. You'll see Reinach's been held up at the back there. France getting into a nice position, nice right foot in first, 9 position, makes a good pass, and they can play from there.
Yes, man. The
And
3
then
of the
he's back to,
9.
and then he's back to secure the next ruck as well. So special man, special player.
Yeah, France is the guy that he doesn't let you down in life or in rugby. He's not always healthy nowadays. So in our mythical rating system, just so everyone understands it, we're just assuming everyone's healthy. Shoulders,
Yep.
arms, necks. And so sometimes we factor that in. What strikes me about the ruck doctrine, if you will, France, is he's always trying, just like in a scrum, trying to bind long and clean long. And like you said, I think you could have gathered probably 50 clips really easy of him rucking beyond the man.
Yeah.
What it does is it cleans out so much space, not just on the 9 clearing the base from that ruck, but also on the next phase. Everything is going to be better for Damien de Allende on the next phase if that entire side has been pushed back. We ranked France obviously highest for his set piece work, for his scrummaging. 39 out of 40, which is about as good as you can get. 26 out of 30 for the tackle, because like you said, he has some flaws in technique that come up sometimes when he's tired in the game. 18 out of 20 for what we'll call the maul starting, the maul pushing, the maul killing, and then the lift. Everyone talks about how he's a taller guy than you realize. So at the line out, when he's running around at that 1.92 kind of frame with longer arms than he looks like he has as well, it's a great lift. 7 out of 10 on the carry. Obviously, that's his weakest. I think his weakest point is on the carry, because sometimes I kind of think he just focuses more on not losing the ball. And on the attack, he's decided I'm never going to get pilfered. So he goes down quickly and gets it done. That comes out to a 90, which you would think one of the greats. I think he has the most caps as a prop in Springbok history. So you would think he's going to be an A student, and sure enough, he is. So before we go on to the next guy, any closing words on the Buffel?
No, just I stayed away from the scrum clips for obvious reasons. I'd love to stay credible on this channel, and also the mauling and the maul stopping. I was trying to get some clips on there, but it's amazing the work that they do. You can't even put it into the visuals. It's the way that they put the jumper down when we're mauling, or the way that they put the contester down when we're contesting mauls after that. It's all so technical, and those boys get it right more often than not. So it's a pity that we can't show those technical things of the really, really hard work they do. But like I said, I'll leave those to the experts, and we'll focus on the tackle, carry, and a couple of skill clips.
Okay, so then what I'll do is I'll do quick word pictures on that stuff, actually. So for France on the scrum, he's always comfortable. He makes sure he gets comfortable. He talks to the ref a lot. This is going to surprise guys. He's one of the guys who talks the most to a ref. He says, "What did you think about that scrum? What did you like?" He checks in, and because he's likable and he's not a hothead, and he's not yelling at a ref, the ref will give him an actual response. He said only a few refs have not come back with something. On the lift, he doesn't lift too early. One of the big mistakes you can make as a young player when you're the lifter is to try and lift the big lock into the air. Let the lock jump. At the apex of the jump, then you give him the boost. You're going to get a much bigger leverage. He's a leverage player, and on his bind, like I'm saying, he finds your armpit hair, and then he takes that armpit hair and he tries to put it down to your belly button. So, I know he's gentle and nice and all, but there's also a lot of pain in a scrum. Now we're going to jump over to Mr. Incredible, the guy who looks like he's in a cartoon, Vincent Koch, who I will also say, as a matter of reference, one of the funniest guys in the box squad. Low key, he's the man you want to have there next to you in the long flight, because he's going to keep you giggling.
Right, so let's have a look at Mr. Incredible. First clip is a rocking clip where there's a lot of space between him and the ball carrier. Now, he's probably setting up for a pod behind, not being part of that first pod, realizes that there might be what we call like a man on fire, a guy being isolated, and just the aggressiveness with which he hits this and how that opens up. It's such a good visual of how he gets nice and low early and then works that I mean, it's a great target. The guy was side on, which is great. But then, you still got to make that clean and get onto it. Now, the next one is a bit different. He gets into a static position. So the ball goes out to Sia. He's got two guys that he has to contend with. And you'll see he gets himself into like a scrum position. Because what happens from there? That 2 foot extension, two leg extension. He does get some assistance from Erge, but he's got a great bind onto these two jacklers, and then they move the ball from there and the ball gets played. So rucking is very effective and very aggressive. On his carries, he's got some good carries, but what I liked about this is, have a look at how he was looking in behind. And I don't know if André said, I don't want it, or you carry it, but keeps the ball in 2 hands, shows the ball, gets into a great position to carry, keeps working, and the ball's available. So he's not just that one-trick pony. He can show the ball and he can get into space as well, which makes him a good carrier. On the defense, once he gets into that finish, which he creates by being right in front of the player, and once he gets into that finish, you'll always see him disrupt and stay part of that as long as possible. So Vincent he's got an intent after tackling. He wants to be part of the ruck. He wants to disrupt and he wants to cause chaos. But that comes at a bit of a price sometimes, because what he does is he soaks to steal. So what that means is he's pulling the bodies into him, and then he wants to get them down because he wants to get onto the jackal. And that can sometimes lead to him giving away some yards. So on this one, you can see he gets up. So instead of, making that tackle, he does stay part of it. But I think if he gets a bit lower here, we don't concede the amount of yards we do. And he probably gets onto that ball regardless. But it's a difficult one if you get into that position there, wanting to get him back. And he's also fighting their blast, coming in from the side, working him from the outside. So he's a fantastic tackler. I think he's doing that second job first sometimes, where he wants to get onto the ball before making the tackle. Does that make sense, Harry?
Yeah, definitely. He's an ambitious prop. He tries to do a lot. He's not content with just ticking a couple of boxes. He wants to do it all.
That's very true. And then he's got a great work rate. I mean, he thought that was a loose ball. He's still on the ground. Guy stepping back in. We force him to the inside. But once he gets hold of you, you're always going only one way, back to where you came from. So Mr. Incredible for a reason. I think he's a very dynamic prop, and he does a lot more than he's probably expected to.
But he's great. He's in very good nick. There was a time when his shirt was pulled off and he had to play a few phases with no jersey on, and we got to see that the guy is not your quintessential prop with a big boop. He's got some ribs showing. He's actually a monster in the weight room. There's a great stat they have in the NFL about pancake blocks, where you have offensive linemen are supposed to take the defensive antagonist and then pancake them, and it's literally called a pancake, where they end up on the ground with big guy on top of big guy. That I think Vinny would probably lead on pancakes, and so that's the flaw you look at too. Is sometimes he goes too much for that and ends up on the wrong side, or he's shed by the carrier. But actually, when he gets in a good position, it's hard to mess with him. In scrum time, the scouting report on Koch is that that opponents find it difficult to bind on him. He's a difficult bind. You can find a place somewhere in Malherbe. You cannot find one on Koch. He's like I said, he's a very low fat guy. He's got a difficult build, and you saw that in the World Cup down the stretch, how many times an opposing prop would just find it difficult, knowing what Vinny was going to do and still being beaten by Mr. Incredible. Our rankings for him are almost like a decathlete, where he's not the best at anything, but he's the second best at everything. So it ends up being a pretty high score. 38 out of 40 for the scrum, 26 out of 30 for the tackle positions, 17 out of 20 for his maul and his lift. Probably would like to see him a little bit in the maul, get involved earlier. Sometimes he's the guy who stands off and reads, and sometimes I think he misses his mark there. And then 8 out of 10, good carrier, really a reliable carrier, especially in the red zone. That comes out to 89. So if you look at 90, 89, then you realize that in World Cups, Malherbe Koch has been sort of a institution. It's almost like the firm of Malherbe and Koch. You go, okay, now I get it. But now we want to go on to someone who's a very interesting character who's making a super big claim. He's been around for a long time. I remember seeing him in Wellington, New Zealand in 2018 before that great win over the All Blacks, and he wasn't really a frontliner then either. He's the man with he's got thighs the size of a Samoan. We're talking now about the great bull Wilco Louw, who erases people. He obliterates people. He sometimes evaporates them at scrum time. Take a look at his clips.
Yeah, I would actually just like to thank him and Thomas du Toit for ensuring that one's always wearing a headband, because when you do the clips, they look so similar with the size that they've got. Gary, we mentioned the size, and even though that size, he's the guy diving onto the ground, winning balls off kick chases. That's not been. He's winning the scraps. If your tight edge prop diving onto the ground to win you the scraps, it says a lot about your system and your culture and what's happening inside of your team. On the carries, good timing, really good timing. There's no 9 here, so he can't. There's no one showing him who's gonna pick up. Bongi might pass, or Sia might have passed, or he doesn't know. But his timing, have a look, and then he gets into that position to get the ball. That's what I was talking about. Now, if this was a normal prop carry, we saw one from Malherbe earlier. He would have gone straight. He would have looked for 2 defenders, get in between them, closed it up, put the head down, and he'll go Vol Bartman through the middle, and he'll ensure that we keep the ball. But instead, he goes onto the side. He gives that little hip jab. Now, what that does is, once they tackle you, they give you resistance to keep you upright, and you're actually keeping that inside foot away from them. And when he's beaten you there, now he's just going. And whatever he's getting now, fantastic. And that's the giraffe running for the first time. Have a look at the ground skill. He gets onto, so there he's on his chest. If he's got good ground skill, he pushes that ball back. Mbonambi is a bit late. Still gets the ball out, but I'd love to see more control on that placement. And then this is a fantastic carry, Harry. You'll love this. Again, good timing. Du Toit helps him here because he stays alive. He doesn't just dip down, go down easily. Because he stays alive, the work that Du Toit does here opens up the space on the side to go through there. And you'll see what I mean in just a second. So he spins around, up, keeps going, and that's a big body to stop. That's a big body to stop. So get on there, keep working. Next one up. He doesn't want to go down. So it's not that typical prop carry where they just want to look after the ball. He's got intent, and he's working with a purpose. He wants to keep going. Like we see the loose forwards and those boys carry when they want to make as much yards as they can.
It's a horrible 1-2 to face on the defensive side, by the way.
It is. It definitely is. And on the defense, he's no slouch. He works really hard, tremendously hard from both sides. You'll see he's making tackles and moving from one side of the ruck to the other. So there he is defending on the one side. He gets himself closing up that space. The catch-up is a bit late. Difficult to position to tackle from. Gets in front, stays in front. And the Boks get an opportunity to make them play another ruck. But I don't think there's a lot of players that stop any player as close to the line as he does there. Difficult position. He's a strong man. And then we'll probably see this one when we show Ox's clips again. So he's in the line, good line speed, gets off the line really well. He's at 3, goes with Peter Steff, and Ox and Wilco get hold of Itoje in this, gives him another little. He had a couple of drone views in this game, and both of them back into position to tackle again. So, good player, a big body to look after when he's carrying, and when he's tackling, he's making a real impact on defense as well.
Yeah, so far, Frans, Vinny, and then now Wilco, quiet guys. They don't talk a lot. What's interesting on these clips you can easily pick out is they're always catching the biggest carrier on defense. So in their channel, whether the second or third off the ruck, they're catching the big lock or the 7, 6 for other teams. And so they're tackling that all day long. So you can imagine, like you just pointed out, I thought it was a great point about you scrumming, you get pinged, then you have to defend a maul, and then off the maul, maybe they go split, and then there's a series of around the corners. You're doing all that, but you're never getting player of the year and you're never getting man of the match. But literally you're doing the hardest possible thing. You're tackling Maro Toje, you're tackling Scott Barrett, with a head start, and you just got to take it. Wilco has made big strides, I think, in getting more busy. If you don't like these ratings, it's because we're not grading him so much on the quality. The quality is super high at whatever he does. Is we want him to be as busy as possible. I'd almost say that he's a guy you would give 3 more carries to a game than he is now. I'd almost say that you trust him to go another 10 minutes, like the All Blacks are doing with their top props, is they're leaving them on till 60 if he gets to be the starting guy. Wilco Louw is stated the case to be the starting tight head. Obviously, that's partly because Frans Malherbe is having difficulty shaking some pretty serious injuries to his core frame. But we rated him as 39 out of 40, equal to the Buffel at scrum, 27, so higher at the tackle, the highest so far in the tackle. 17 out of 20 on the lift in the maul. Not much you can do differently there, except probably just gonna have to, like someone who's a wonderful scrummager, almost try to find that in the maul. Like try to find a way where you can be basically a scrummager instead of thinking a different way. And then finally 7 on the carry. Mostly, like I said, he doesn't load. He has not offered himself for the carry as much as maybe I'd like to see him. He's almost always been the latch and the ruck man. So that brings him to a 90, which is actually equal to Frans Malherbe, but he's on the way up. His trajectory is now, we're seeing, because props mature late, we're seeing now that he's probably in the line now to be the starting tight head prop for the Springbok team in 2025. So we have 90 Malherbe, 89 Koch, 90 Wilco. Those things could shift one way or the other in any one game or any kind of stretch. So what you have is remarkable depth. Now we tend to have a dark horse. I don't know how much of a dark horse Neethling Fouché is, the Stormer skipper, and he's the one that talks a lot more than the other 3 guys. He's got great socials. He's a fun guy. He grew up with different allegiances, but I think within marriage, maybe it's a shift. Maybe there's a lot of complicated things about Fouché. But one thing is for sure, and his hairstyle and his mustache. But he is an up and comer. We'll say this as well, that he can be a late bloomer as a prop, but it's not as weird. It'd be kind of weird if you were only 29 or 30 or 31 if you were going to be considered as a wing. But for a prop, there's so much dark arts and IP and pictures in your head and things that an Irish or a Scottish prop will throw at you that you don't know until you've experienced it. We've looked at him as someone who has to come up on the scrummaging side, though. The difficulty is you don't get better at test scrums until you're in a test scrumming. So 35 out of 40 for him, just a cut below the other guys. 28 out of 30. The tragedy is in tackling. The tragedy is he got red carded in a way that I thought was way too harsh when he had a knee on the ground in the Irk. 16 out of 20 on the lift and the maul, and an 8 out of 10 on carry because Fouché is really quick. He has great feet. He runs support lines like a 9, and he has finished. He has the ability to finish a movement instead of just going to ground. That puts him at 87, just below the top cohort, and we're looking for great things for him because he has been named in the Springbok squad.
Our ultimate 2025 Springbok team every Sunday with André Pretorius.